The other great question I'd like to say is about Namu Myoho Renge Kyo and Namu Myoho Renge Kyo.
Yeah.
You know, I was talking to Myoho Shonin
Right.
in Texas, and she's constantly, she does a lot of wonderful work with the prisons and that, and some of those the people in the jail are
Right.
SGI members or ex-SGI members, and she specifically says, you know, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo is 7 characters.
Yeah.
You know, not 6.
Right.
You know,
Right.
specifically.
Right.
Not the Namu Myoho Renge Kyo.
Right.
Namu Myoho Renge Kyo.
Yeah, there's no way using Chinese characters or even the Japanese phonetic system, hiragana,
Right.
to write Nam Myoho Renge Kyo.
Right.
You just can't. It can't be done.
Right.
You can only transliterate that into English as Nam.
Well, you know, I feel a lot of it, perhaps, and this is what I see happens in a lot of lay movements, is lay people observe certain things, and it happens within Nichiren Shu,
Yeah.
and they copy it,
Yeah.
and without the right information, it perpetuates
They
itself.
don't know the principles behind what they're
Right,
doing.
like even rubbing the juzu.
Right.
You know, rubbing the juzu, people don't know why they do it. They saw a priest do it and they
Right.
did it. But we know in Nichiren Shu, it's actually simplistically used to give a signal to someone with your hands
Right.
to end a service.
Right.
So all of these things that are perpetuated through what people assume is Buddhism
Yeah.
without the proper instruction
Yeah.
perpetuates itself, because chanting, as you were saying, chanting the daimoku when done quickly,
Yeah.
sometimes, you know, in Japanese grammar,
Yeah.
it blends in, but it's not
Yeah,
lost.
the ooh drops off just
Right.
naturally. Or
Well,
it sounds
because
like it drops off.
sounds like it drops off. It just becomes more shortened,
Right.
but it's not gone. It's quicker.
Right.
So if you hear the priest
Right.
doing the quicker daimoku, it sounds like they're saying Namu,
Right.
but it's actually Namu.
Right.
But it's shorter. And the same
Yeah.
is, you know, and it's very important that we go back to the sutra where the Buddha says all of these are the words, you know, the body of
Right.
the Buddha. You don't chant the sutra dropping off certain, you know.
Yeah, you don't gloss over characters. 'Cause
Right.
Each character is a golden Buddha.
Right.
But at the same time, you know, if it sounds like Nam Myoho Renge Kyo when you're chanting really fast, you know, that's not a doctrinal issue. That's a linguistic issue.
Well, and also it's an education issue.
Right.
So
Right.
you know that just brings to me is that there's just a lot of misunderstanding
Yeah.
amongst our Soka Gakkai brothers.
And also, you know, it was some former Soka Gakkai leaders who were trying to create their own little groups on
Right.
the internet who were trying to make that into a huge issue. You know, because they were saying, we chant Namu, so we're correct, and the rest of you are wrong, you people in SGI. So that was not coming from Nichiren Shu.
No.
It was silly. In fact, whenever a Japanese priest, or my wife is Japanese, and I told her about this argument, they just roll their eyes and go, you know, how silly can you get?
Right.
You know, this is, anyone who understood even a little bit of Japanese linguistics will know what's really going on here.
Well, you know, and that comes down to another thing, that the idea of chanting the sutra,
Yeah.
which is a practice within itself.
Right.
You know, during people coming from SGI are pronouncing the Shindoku,
Yeah.
the the Japanese pronunciation of Chinese,
Chinese, right.
and the pronunciation is incorrect.
Right.
And to me, you know, that
Well, like for instance, you know, Tina Turner, who's a wonderful singer,
right,
and I believe a very sincere Buddhist, apparently was never really taught how to pronounce these characters correctly, and apparently she was always taught how to chant so fast that she's mangling the pronunciations.
right.
And it's just such a shame to hear some of the videos that she's uploaded on YouTube of her chanting, you know, the sutra, because it's not right.
That's not right.
You know, and if anybody should chant the sutra beautifully, it should be Tina Turner.
Right.
You know,
I would love to. I would like to.
and that's a problem with miseducation.
Well, and you know, chanting the daimoku is a practice within itself, in which
Yeah.
we actually even almost a yogic practice where we use our whole body,
Absolutely.
we use our tanden, and that's a study within itself. So
Right.
it's very important that we not gloss over our practice.
By
and that
tanden,
we-
you mean the point below the
point
belly button.
below the
So you're
navel.
chanting with your whole diaphragm.
Absolutely,
Your
you're chanting with your whole being is what
Right.
Nichiren Shonin said, and in order to do that, and to chant with your real voice,
Right.
because a lot of times when people are chanting, especially in SGI,
Yeah.
they will make this irregular, and this again copying, you know,
Right.
the same tape copying over and over. They tighten, very uncomfortable sounding,
it's
very
nasal
uncomfortable, very
kind of
nasally,
sound,
and to me, that is actually one part of the practice that's missing, you know, and to actually chant it. Nichiren Shonin specifically said, you can chant the Daimoku once with sincerity, correctly, upright,
Yeah.
and it'd be worth 1,000,000 times chanting it incorrectly or insincerely. So that again comes down to another point where SGI members focusing so much on benefit, and that when benefit isn't brought to them, then they suddenly are in this quandary of why it's not working, and then suddenly I've actually seen it turn into a depression almost, where something's wrong with me. I must not have enough faith. I must not be a good enough person. Therefore, because it hasn't come to me.
Because their practice is not about spiritual faith and personal cultivation. It's really just about magical thinking, and the practice becomes just kind of an obsessive compulsive way to try to control your reality.
Hence, Gongyo almost becomes an obsessive compulsive reaction instead of a sincere expression.
Right.
Hence the name, sometimes we refer to it as abracadabra Buddhism.
Yeah.
Because it's almost as saying you could replace the Daimoku with abracadabra and perhaps get the same results.
Right.
George Carlin said, you can pray to whatever God you want or any illusion you want, and it's about the results are 50-50. So he decided to pray to Joe Pesci, and Joe Pesci got the same results as he did praying to a deity in heaven.
Yeah.
So, and another thing that comes down to it is that what advice would you give to people who perhaps are in this kind of, they've devoted, and a lot of times people have devoted 20, 30 years to a group.
Yeah.
And as we know, one of the situations that happens when you attempt to leave SGI or Nichiren Shoshu, there is almost like leaving a Amish commune in the way that you are shunned.
Yeah, well, it was become your family, and now your family is shutting you down, rejecting you.
Right.
Well, a couple things. One is that people who are leaving these groups, they need a detox period before they jump in to another group.
And we learned that as Nichiren Shu because suddenly there was a big influx, and we didn't realize, we thought they were regular Buddhists coming into Buddhism,
and they
and
had
it was
all
a
these
detox.
issues that they hadn't worked out,
Right.
assumptions that they didn't even know they had, that were not correct in our form of practice, assumptions in terms of how to do the practice and attitudes.
Right.
So there really needs to be a detox period, and that's another reason why in Nichiren Shu, when people come to join us, at least I do, I want people to go through a minimum of 6 months working with me to learn what we're about and how we do things, and so I can learn about them. And at the end of that 6-month period, they may decide, well, maybe this isn't for me. At least now they'll know.
At least they know.
If they decide, I really want to make a commitment and take Jukai or the precept to uphold the Daimoku, within Nichiren Shu, then they'll be informed enough to know what they're really getting into.
Well, and also it's not being done through apologetics or, for instance,
we're not trying to argue them.
That's right.
We just want to educate them so they know.
Absolutely.
They can make up their own mind. I don't mind if someone spends 6 months or more studying with me and then they decide, well, maybe I don't want to do this. I'm not doing the program to fill seats.
Absolutely.
I'm doing it because I enjoy teaching the Dharma.
Right.
And if I planted that seed, whatever they do with that, that's on them.
My feeling is that hence we offer to take the three treasures here.
Right.
And some people may only go that far and
Right.
may not specifically become a Nichiren Shu Buddhist.
Right. They may just become a Buddhist.
Yeah. But to myself is that enabling people to aspire or have that bodhicitta, that aspiring mind for Buddha nature is the greatest gift anybody can give to somebody. And ultimately, I believe that our true nature knows what the Lotus Sutra is, what the Daimoku is. And naturally, people are so, it's almost as if it's breathing. It's so natural just to come to it that you don't have to convince people. They understand it. And that's the best way for people to come to Nichiren Shu.
Yeah, because, the Lotus Sutra, it doesn't use the terminology and rhetoric of Buddha nature. But really what it's saying is the core of the Lotus Sutra is affirming the Buddha nature of everyone.
Right.
And when you're ready to hear that affirmation and affirm it yourself, you'll acknowledge the Lotus Sutra. But getting back to the people coming from SGI, so they need a detox period, and they need that education period, and they need to know. I would like them to know two things. One is they need to empty their teacup. You can't pour new tea in there if it's still full of the old, cold, stuff. they need to realize that they have to start fresh when they're coming to Nichiren Shu.
Well, you know, that comes down to the idea of, which of course, even once you join or have a master or a teaching,
Yeah.
that we have a beginner's mind in the
Beginner
sense that
mind,
we empty we allow, not empty because you can't forget
You can't
that.
really, no.
But all of that is part of the makeup. But the idea is this awakened, aware state where we
Right.
are constantly learning,
Right.
constantly checking, constantly verifying, which I believe is the true function of our brains.
Yeah.
You know, is not totally accepting something, but evaluating and
Right.
living it, you know?
Right. And then the second thing they should know is that even as I'm telling them, you know, like start fresh, empty the teacup, you know, start with a beginner's mind. Don't think that your previous experience, whether it was 2 years or 20 years or more, you know, has no value. Because that was 10, 20, 30 years of you expressing your sincerity.
Right.
And you making a karmic connection to the
With
Lotus
Buddhism.
Sutra and the Daimoku
Right.
and Nichiren. And even if there were some things wrong with how it was presented, you were
Absolutely.
still making that connection as best you could in your
Right.
life. And that means something, you know. Every moment of the sincere chanting of the Daimoku, every moment of
Means
sincere study is a wholesome cause that will come to fruition.
Absolutely.
You know, and we want to help you bring that into fruition. We're not telling you, oh, poor sucker, you just wasted 30 years of your life, and,
right.
and now you have to begin again.
But the other,
That's not how we mean it.
the other thing that needs to, a kind of humbleness needs to happen,
Yeah.
because a lot of what's expressed in the Soka Gakkai and Nichiren Shoshu is according to how much time. I'm a 30-year practitioner,
Yeah,
I'm a 20-year practitioner, and
Yeah.
they might meet somebody who has studied Buddhism less than them
right.
and have maybe more in tune with Buddhism and understands it in a deeper level,
Yeah.
that they base things on like a ranking system according to years,
Right,
you
right.
know?
Right. But
But there's a kind of humbleness that needs to happen, that they need to let that go.
exactly, right, right.
Which
It's
is
like
anything.
if you spent 30 years studying Shotokan karate and then you go to a kung fu studio, you know, teaching like, you know, Chinese kung fu, well, that 30 years of practicing Shotokan is not going to help you there. You have to start fresh.
Well, the basics of hopefully understanding that every day, if you went in even what you were learning with beginner's mind and true sincerity,
Yeah.
you would naturally have that tendency, that proclivity to
Right.
to always go in as anew.
Right. Well, and another thing about the Shoshu and Soka Gakkai is their attitude toward clergy. It should not carry over if they're going to join
Right.
or associate with Nichiren Shu, because when the Shoshu, there's almost too much reverence, I think. Oh, the priest cannot be questioned. You know, and they're somehow better than us. And I don't know that the Shoshu priesthood themselves teach this.
Well, you
But
know,
it seems to be the attitude I hear, and it's not right.
well, I actually had an experience when I was a shami.
Yeah.
As I said, I was taught originally Chinese Buddhism.
Right.
So as we were discussing before, Chinese Buddhism allows you to go anywhere
Right.
and study. So I wasn't kept from going anywhere to learn about any Buddhism. I could
Right.
read any sutra I wanted, etc. And somebody, of course, invited me to a Nichiren Shoshu meeting
Right.
because they knew I was training Nichiren.
Right.
And this gentleman was part of Nichiren Shoshu, a very opinionated person. He didn't care the
Yeah.
difference. So reverently I went there, and the Nichiren Shoshu priest, I of course, being with my master Tsukamoto Shonin, I was only exposed to Nichiren Shu.
Right.
And the, Nichiren Shu priests are usually very available,
Yeah.
and also very, accommodating and supportive. But
Yeah.
this minister, I couldn't believe, ate separately, and
Yeah.
no one saw him except for the service, and then he immediately left.
Right. Right.
And it was almost as if this kind of bringing forth the same doctrine of the successive priesthood,
Yeah.
that this is a Nichiren. But Nichiren Shonin, the one reason I liked Nichiren is because of his availability.
Yeah.
He was in the street, he wasn't
Yeah.
in the temple.
Yeah.
And I think in no way would have Nichiren ever, because of
Yeah.
saying I'm the son of a fisherman, right?
Right.
That he would have ever excluded people. He would be eating with regular people. He would be
Right.
talking with regular people,
Yeah.
And that's the spirit. But when I was there, I was really surprised because
Yeah.
he didn't communicate with them. It was always done through a leader.
Right. Right. So it's like, their priests are supposed to be beyond question, whereas our purpose as priests is to be questioned
Absolutely.
and to help people with their questions.
Absolutely.
You know, my sensei, the Venerable Yusho Matsuda, whenever he gives the Jukai and Gohonzon to a new member, will say, now let us study together.
That's wonderful.
He doesn't say, now let me teach you.
Right.
He says, let us study together. And that to me is, you know, the attitude I really like in Nichiren Shu. The Soka Gakkai, on the other hand, teaches people to look down on the priesthood.
Yes.
And they say that we're all bad, and we're all corrupt, and we're all authoritarian. And a lot of that is projection, because that's how their own leadership acts.
Yes.
You know, but apparently they're blind to that. They don't see that. So, you know, you have people coming to us, and they don't have any respect for the clergy. And that's a problem too, because the fact is that in order to become ministers, we've had to go through some, I don't know if I would say extensive training, but yeah, I think some pretty rigorous training. You know, we've gone through Shami seminars. We've learned how to do, you know, the service correctly,
Right.
and in a dignified,
Right.
beautiful way.
To support others.
Right, and we've been tested, literally written tests on Buddhist doctrine to make sure that we know at least the basics.
Right.
And we're constantly trying to continue to educate ourselves,
Right.
so that, not so that we're better than the laity. You know, as my sensei, Venerable Yusho Matsuda, said, you know, remember, some of the laity have more faith and more strength of practice than we do.
Well,
You know,
it's
the-
obviously evident, and actually,
Yeah.
we don't see that as a threat. I think it is inspiration.
And encouragement, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So, but our responsibility is to be, in a sense, the professionals.
Absolutely.
To be the ones who can facilitate the practice of other people, you know, and help them improve their practice, not do their practice for
For
them.
them.
Although unfortunately it gets that way in Japan, I think,
Yeah.
all too often. But you know, here in North America, we're starting from scratch,
Right.
and we can fit more the ideal of what we're supposed to be.
Well, and also that's what people who obviously come from change their, you know, inherited faith.
Right.
They're obviously looking for something and want to practice something,
Right.
not simply to sit in a pew and listen to people.
Yeah, I'm not here to do it for you. I'm not here to be better than you. I'm not presuming to be even a better Buddhist necessarily.
Right.
You know, in a sense of faith or wisdom. But you know what I can say is that I've received a certain amount of training that I am now in a position where I can share it with you and help you learn and set up your practice and improve your practice. You know, just like a football coach or a baseball coach, you know, they're there to help all the members of the team
Right.
improve in their game.
Even though it's interesting because with football or any other sport, sometimes the coach, you know, it might have been a mediocre player,
Yeah,
but there's something, he has a skill,
right.
both organization and as well as a skill given to them as kind of you know, and this is available to lay people as well.
Yeah.
Passing on how to teach,
Right.
how to practice, how to maintain the basic transmission of the tradition.
Right. And how to encourage.
And how to encourage. But the other thing is the basic, you know, the transmission is open to all. It's not
Right.
exclusively the priest.
Right. Right.
That was one thing that brought me to Nichiren Buddhism, because my master said specifically Nichiren did not like secrets.
Yeah.
Because he specifically spoke against
Right.
other schools that had secrets. That,
Right.
you know, I have a secret. If you do what I say, I'll give you that secret.
Right. Right.
Whereas Nichiren exposed all of those secrets,
Right.
you know, most specifically.
Yeah.
So that's really wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to just add before we conclude? I think that was just great conversation.
I think we covered everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank you for coming first to our temple and for our anniversary and sharing in this video with us, because one thing we need to continue to do is reach out to people, just not to tell them what is right and wrong,
Yeah.
but to answer some basic questions from things we've experienced.
Right. Right.
And that's all we can do. So I thank you very much today for sharing your wisdom to us together. Thank you very much. And next time, our next series will be with Reverend McCormick concerning coming from other Buddhisms, such as Zen Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, and then studying Nichiren Buddhism, followed by a third series of those coming from non-Buddhist backgrounds and learning about Nichiren Buddhism. So therefore, thank you very much again.